The Online Business Exchange was a two-day live event presented by the Business School at the Open University. During the event, there was live chat and forum discussions. The live chat is now closed, but we hope you enjoy the video that follows. Hello and welcome back to the Online Business Exchange. Well, we've been having a very eventful morning so far. Thank you so much for all of those of you who have participated so far in the discussions. I appreciate that many of you are coming and going throughout the day at times that suit you best. You will be watching this live in real time if it's around 10:30, or you may be watching it on catch-up. We're getting these videos ready so that you can catch up on them later in the day as we develop this Online Business Exchange, which has four themes. We're talking a lot about finance this morning, but we're going to go on to talk about sales and then marketing and also supply chain management over this whole 48-hour discussion. The idea for those of you who've just joined about this business exchange is that we're tackling these four key themes with colleagues from the business school to provide fresh insight into new developments and how these areas relate to a digital economy. We're doing this through the live chat that you can engage with if you are selecting the Watch and Engage option from the website. Now, I appreciate that many people are still watching in the Watch Only, which is absolutely fine, and we hope that you get a lot from these live sessions by doing so. But if you would like to use the Watch and Engage, you'll be able to interact with our voting tools, and you can also see what other people are talking about as well as posing your own questions. And to do that, if you don't have an Open University computer username, you can get a free visitor account, see the frequently asked questions section on the website about how to get one, fill in your email address, etc. Then come in through the Watch and Engage and use that email address and your password that you can set up for yourself. It will hopefully provide a much more rich experience of the event. But there are other ways you can also connect, and we're having discussions on Yammer. Now, if you've registered, you'll be invited to our closed network. So that's everybody who is participating in this exchange. And the Yammer discussions are really a place to explore the key themes and also have a coffee shop to network and to generate ideas. Now, we've had quite a lot of discussion on there, and a couple of things I'd like to mention. Catelyn is interested to see how the referendum will impact on online business, or whether the internet is above national events, which is a very topical and key point, bearing in mind the recent current political situation in the United Kingdom. Thierry in Latvia says that the main focus is a business and management consultant for SMEs, and Thierry is involved in developing projects with strong components of competitive advantage. Again, one of the key aspects that we'll be discussing in today's session. So thanks for all those comments on Yammer. Also, you can use Twitter if there are any things. We'll be picking those up and bringing those to sessions. And the hashtag is OU_exchange. So we've got a widget of where everyone is in the world, and we're going to show you that. So this is something that you can vote for if you are looking at the Watch and Engage option. We're mostly in the UK and other in the EU as well. And hello, Africa and Middle East. So really nice to see a global range of visitors to this event. That's wonderful because, of course, so many of these aspects will affect you all very differently, depending on your context, depending on which business you're involved with and where you're situated. So do let us know how these things are impacting on you. So I'd like to join back to the studio, Devendra Kudwadi. Now, you've been having some discussion backstage with participants in the chat, and there have been some very interesting issues raised. And this short session now is about corporate governance. Tell us, what have you been talking about?
Well, I mean, participants on the chat have raised some significant issues of what we will call core corporate governance issues. That is, how do big corporations, limited companies get governed, and how are they managed in the interest of all the stakeholders? So a couple of observations that came up from the chat. You mentioned Catelyn, actually. She put a question about lack of transparency, the regard for the employees, how they work within the organization, respect for them, sheer force of the profit objective, then customers' interests being compromised. And so how do we make sure that the companies deliver what they are supposed to deliver for the society, including shareholders and other stakeholders, is a very important issue, what we will call corporate governance debate. So that's one of the things coming up. There is an issue of ethics coming up in the conversation, how ethical the businesses are being run. And I think ethics and corporate governance debate sort of borders. They are different because there are legalities involved and regulation involved, which is about corporate governance. Fiduciary duty of the board of directors to perform in the interest of widest stakeholder groups that they are engaging with in the business and social world. But ethics is a slightly different issue, which is much more about the choices that we make to pursue our objectives, which is more to do with the personal value system and social value system. So those are the two things that have come up already in the discussion.
Interesting, isn't it? You mentioned this sort of definition of corporate governance, which is really all about the internal processes of senior management and reporting to disclose to the board of directors the interests, I guess, of the stakeholders in the company. And it's an interesting fact that I think a lot of this comes to light when there is failure, when there are problems. So to what extent is this sort of failure or success important when you're considering the issue of corporate governance?
I think failures or scandals bring these things to light, but actually they should be part of the regular business practice that you have corporate governance mechanism internally and sometimes external checks on the conduct of the business. So scandals such as we had reporting scandal recently within UK a couple of years ago, the earnings that were forecast by Tesco, for example, were not what actually happened, and then they had to go back on their forecast estimates saying that they were not appropriate. You had before that scandals like Enron when the banks, the energy giant in US failed. We had problems with Lehman Brothers during the financial crisis. They had taken too much risk in terms of lending and investment decisions. So those are corporate failures of one kind, and then there could be ethical issues arising from it. For example, not reporting the expected earnings, what you are expecting to earn in 4 months' time, 3 months' time. We had within banking sector a few years ago what was known as London interbank borrowing rate LIBOR scandal, where companies were sharing information about the interest rates. Before that, we had an airline industry. Virgin Airlines and British Airlines were sharing information about the pricing. Now all these things are bordering on issues of good corporate behavior, good corporate governance, and ethical decision making at the highest level in the companies. So a corporate governance mechanism is supposed to provide a set of internal mechanisms within the board constitution and the processes and reporting, which hopefully would put a check and balance on that kind of behavior, which is not in the interest of stakeholders within the business community, which is the shareholders, investors, lenders, consumers, employees, society at large. So corporate governance is trying to make businesses accountable in a way to the society. So it's a wide spectrum of issues that it tries to cover.
Okay, excellent. I should also mention that we are joined in the chat as well, supporting this, because of course we're having live chat as well as these live discussions. And Lotfi Bokurulu is engaging with that. So he is there to ask any questions to and is generating some of the debate. And if some of those points come up that are relevant to this discussion, I'll be reaching them with you, Dev. I wanted to look at this whole area, I guess, of the past and the future. And you know, corporate governance had its historical roots in the past with, you know, the Dutch East India companies, you know, a long, long time ago. So how was that set up, and how has that then influenced, I guess, the way that we're dealing with things now? And then what are the implications for the future? Yeah,
I mean, Karen, as you rightly say, the problem of corporate governance is originated when the company form was created. So what happens when company form is created, that business is run by a company which is not directly the owners. Business is run by the managers. We call them board of directors, executives, and so on. So when you separate the owner from the manager, the problem arises of how do you make sure that manager performs in the interest of the owner. But as businesses have evolved with society, the stakeholders within the business have gone beyond and increased in terms of customers, employees, not just the owners. So while it has historical roots going back, even the first company was Dutch East India Company and British East India Company, 1600. even that time in 17th century, there were problems of corporate governance. People were being accused of mismanaging the affairs of the investors' funds through those companies. And it has really stayed with us. But we have improved our ways of managing these problems. In the UK, actually, UK has been leading on it. In 1990s, we had first such committee of Cadbury committees, which tried to look at the role of chief executive and chairman. And then it has kept evolving in terms of expectations that society has from the corporate sector. And that has, over the 25 years, it has evolved into what is called Corporate Governance Code, which is essentially a set of provisions which all the limited companies listed within the UK are expected to comply with. And these are informed by a few principles. The principles are that you should be open and transparent about what is the actual situation of the business. So reporting becomes very important. Disclosure of information becomes very important. That you have checks and balances within the board of directors. So you would expect some independent voice on the board, and therefore the code requires that you appoint certain number of non-executive directors who can scrutinize the strategic decisions, challenge the decisions and assumptions that the executives are making. Then there are mechanisms such as strong internal control mechanisms, risk management practices, audit of the way companies run the business. So those are some key principles which inform the code, but the code is practiced differently. UK has a particular approach to it, which is also practiced in many OECD countries in Europe and other places. So the UK approach is that here is the best practice about how you should be governing the business. And if you don't comply with that, explain why you don't want to comply. Okay, so it gives a discretion to management to adopt a best practice. If they want to deviate from it, they are free to do that, but they then need to explain.
Right.
Okay, and then other approach is what is exemplified by the US approach. So they have passed an act. So it's a legal requirement for companies to do certain things, such as independent directors should be appointed, reporting should be of particular standards, and so on. So between these two mechanisms of implementing corporate governance, which is the UK type, which is called principles-based approach, we call it, and the rules-based approach, which is the US version of it. So there is a spectrum of compliance, which is legally required, compliance, which is in principle required. So these are the two main approaches we use for improving the corporate governance.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. We're going to continue this conversation in the chat box. So Lotvi and Devendra, thank you very much for participating in this session, both Devendra on the couch and Lotvi in the chat room. And we're going to continue that before our next session, which is going to begin at 11 o'clock. We asked you what areas you're most interested in. As you know, there are 4 key themes to the Online Business Exchange. And let's see what everyone has to say about that. So finance, we have 17%. Digital supply chain management, 22%. Marketing, 39%. Excellent. We have a session coming up very soon that will be of interest. And selling, 22%. So that's a very interesting spread of areas. Don't forget, you can put anything in the chat box. You can engage with Twitter. The hashtag is OU_exchange. So you can let us know what you're thinking, what areas you're involved with, if you've got any questions, thoughts, etc. And we'll feed those into the discussion also. You can also come into the Watch and Engage option if you aren't already. Just back through the website and get an Open University visitor account to be able to do so. We'll be back at 11, but in the meantime, please do enjoy the live chat or engage with those conversations on Yammer that you'll have been invited to if you've registered, or on Twitter. We'll see you very soon at 11.